One of the most interesting things that I found about you when you were, or when I was doing research for this, is you talked about the 1 hour commute to your job in Boston being like one of the things that really was like a turning point for you when you were thinking about like changing from the corporate world to all of the things that have happened since then. A 1 hour commute was a really big part of my story too, of why I left the corporate world. So I have to know like what was going through your head during those moments and like why was that so pivotal for you?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm originally from Boston area, and I was working at the time at a marketing agency in Boston, and to many, it's their dream role. It was, like, right in Faneuil Hall, like, I would commute in, I'd get Dunkin' Donuts, I'd walk into the internship office, and it was a cool agency as well. So it's like it was good on paper, but I would say the first week I started commuting, and I just knew right away that it was not for me. I was just like, there's so many other places I could be working, but with the hours of the commute more so. And I feel like I would get into the office, I would be done around like 11 a.m. with all of my like essential tasks, and then I would still have to be there.
Yep.
Um, and so just the awareness of like, wow, I could do this from anywhere. And before that in college, I would be studying outside on the grass. And that was when I knew too, like, okay, all my like classmates are going to the library. They're like have this work environment that works for them. And I knew anytime I went into the library to like the quiet section, it was like the least productive time for myself.
Yep.
And yeah, I knew that that worked for me. When I studied outside, it worked better when I worked in my own way. And I quickly learned that commuting into the office, even not in a corporate setting, it was like a marketing agency that I really loved, wasn't for me. I was like, I could be in Hawaii, I could be anywhere, right? Doing the same work.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that that's a tricky thing for a lot of people. And it's like, it's an interesting crossroads when all of the things on paper that you're supposed to be stoked about, like don't feel how you think they're going to. And like
Yes.
having the check boxes of like, yeah, my commute to work is kind of like a movie scene where I'm like going into the city and I'm riding the train and I'm like getting my coffee and doing whatever. And then I work this cool job that a lot of people probably would like to have. But what was it like for you when the things that like checked the boxes for most people were like, well, I don't know if this is really the thing.
Right. Yeah, and it's hard because you feel like you should be happier, and I've felt this in so many different stages of my life, and I think the problem is that media glorifies it, right? Like, especially, like, American movies, and you have the college experience, and if college doesn't feel awesome, then you feel bad about yourself, like, why am I not happy when college should be fun and romanticized? So I think it's a lot of it's expectation, I think, versus our reality of it. And once we have expectation, then it's easy to be let down if we don't feel like a certain way. Um, yeah, but for me, it's just realizing that I and I've always considered myself a black sheep, like doing things differently, or like there's a group of people that are all doing the same thing. And sometimes I'm like, that's awesome for them, but I just know it's not my path. And now I have this, I like to say, um, people who think they are black sheeps realizing they're not a black sheep, they're actually a unicorn pioneer. That like we aren't here to blend into the crowds, you're actually here to like pave your own path. So it's been a long journey of realizing that, but I think once we realize that, it's like, oh, we're not supposed to be doing what everyone else is doing because we're here for a reason to create something that is different and not like everyone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you. So I had same kind of thing. Was working at a marketing agency right out of college. Was
Yeah.
pretty stoked about it because it checked a lot of the boxes that I was going for coming out of school. Like it was a very small agency with a serial entrepreneur, and I got to learn like directly with him. We added a handful of employees while we were at the company, so like I got to experience the growth of it. Some of the clients, one of the clients that I was a lead on was actually based in Boston and Paris. So I was coming out to Boston.
Yeah.
I was flying internationally. Like it was checking all the boxes where I'm like, I get to travel a ton. I get to talk to people who are way smarter than me. I get to learn a ton. Like on paper, this should be awesome. But I remember I was driving in Montana from Billings to Red Lodge, and it's about an hour drive
Mm.
each way. And I just remember seeing some of my friends who are like going into real estate or who were starting their own thing and seeing how flexible their schedules were and just being like, okay, I spend 10 hours a week doing this drive. If I spent 10 hours a week doing anything that was my own project, how far would I have gotten in the last year that I've been doing this? Because that's 500 plus hours that I've just been sitting here in the car listening to podcasts and like listening to my inner dialogue.
Yes.
So I think that really started driving me crazy. And I really give a lot of credit to me jumping ship and doing my own thing like 4.5 years ago to that drive, because I think if it was like a quick little 5 or 10 minute thing and be like annoying enough, but not annoying enough to like actually do something about it. So I'm curious for you, like, what was the thing for you that went from just like, hey, this is annoying, I don't like the commute, I don't think that this thing is making me as happy as everyone said it did. A lot of people get stuck right there and they never actually like take an action to do something different. So what did it take for you to like actually step out of that box and go your own path?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I think we get stuck in that loop. Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm the most curious about like, I think a lot of people get stuck in that like, well, everyone else says that it's cool, I guess it's not that bad. It's that whole region beta paradox where it's like, it sucks, but it doesn't suck enough to change anything about it. Obviously there was something for you that was like, I just can't do this anymore, I have to go my own route. So I'm curious for you, like, how did you go about making that decision that like, this isn't for me, I'm going to do something different?
Yeah. For me, I feel I've always kind of known, and it's been like, how do I curate my environment to know, like, I'm going to listen to certain podcasts, I'm going to listen to certain communities or different events and stuff like this that pushes me into the right kind of answer that I'm looking for. I feel like there wasn't one specific like moment per se.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. So what did leaving look like for you?
Yeah, when I left, I booked a one-way ticket. So I knew I wanted to go travel. I booked a one-way ticket to Hawaii to work remotely. And when I went to work remotely in Hawaii, that was the unlock of like, wow, I can live differently. And it was a test, like, will I be able to do this? And if not, I'll go back to my hometown. But I was able to go and to do that. And from there, like, that was the opening up to like a test, and once you see what is possible from somewhere else outside of where you are from, you see what is possible for other people to go out and to go do too.
What was that feeling like when you realized that, where it was like, oh, this box that I thought existed before does not exist?
Yeah. Yeah, it's empowering. I mean, you hear about it on podcasts. That's what I said. Like in the beginning, I'm listening to different things, and that's how I kind of curated my environment before. And then you go to a place like Hawaii and you're working from there. And that time I was working remotely for a tech sales job. And to realize the environments that make you feel more confident or comfortable too, and to be able to be in those spaces and also performing, it's like, yeah, it unlocks a different level of what is possible. And you have a lot of limiting beliefs at first, but once you get that proof of like, wow, this is my reality, or this is actually helping me, um, that shift is everything. And it's hard to go back to what you knew or were
Yeah.
told after that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a trip for me that was actually the catalyst for me like leaving what I was doing. And I got sent to Paris for a trade show. And we were there for like 6 days. The trade show was in the basement of the Louvre, which was really cool. But yeah, it was like in the medical sales space. We were doing some fun stuff. And then after that trade show, I had like 12 days that I tacked on to the end of the trip to go see some family friends and go see some friends in like Germany and Switzerland. And it turned out to be awesome. But what I realized at the time was I was like so motivated to be done with my work that I was like super dialed in when I actually was working. And so what I found, just like what you said with like having most of your stuff done by 11 a.m. and then just having to sit there all day, I was like, I'm spending so much time when I'm back in Montana just filling the hours because they had to be filled. When in reality, if I'm motivated enough, I can get my entire day's worth of work done in 2.5 hours. Like when
Right.
I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Paris, I'm like, I want to get this done as fast as possible because there's so much other stuff for me to be doing. And that was like the big aha moment for me too, where I was like, okay, if I'm spending 10 hours a week driving, and on
Mm-hmm.
average, it only takes me 2.5 hours to get the really important stuff done per day, that frees up like 30 hours to do literally anything else if I just work for myself.
Right.
And so going back to Montana and having like, hey, go sit in this chair for 10 hours, I was like, I think I'm done with that.
Right. And sometimes you just know, like the question that you asked, it's like, I don't even know. Sometimes it's just this inner knowing too of like when you feel a bigger calling or you feel like something's just not your place, you just have to follow those nudges and then like one breadcrumb leads to the next, which leads to the next and trusting the process. And I think that's a huge learning too of like if you're curious about it, if you're listening to podcasts like this one, the chances are you're supposed to be living differently.
Yeah.
And I think just believing in yourself of like, okay, there is a reason. So let me like take that hint or that nudge and do that first step. And for me, it was knowing like, okay, I'm only going to reply to remote jobs. Like, I'm only going to do that. And like, with the intention of, okay, now what is my dream company I want to work at? Because so many
Mm,
people blindly apply to remote jobs. And it's like, no, you can be in control of your life, of your reality when you actually are like sure on what you want. And so many people don't realize, like, oh, I don't want to be in an office. They're just like blindly doing it without actually taking a pause and being like, is this for me? You know?
100%. I think one of the things about intuition that isn't talked about enough is that it's a lot easier to follow once you built momentum following it than it is at the beginning. Like it's so common to hear these like pieces of advice. So like, oh, just follow your gut, follow your intuition, follow your calling. And I think that a lot of times the people giving that advice are people who took a lot of chances by doing that early, but now they've got a
Mm,
really long line of successes that proves that following your intuition is a good idea. But I
yeah.
think when you've got somebody who, for whatever reason, is either following the status quo or they ended up in a position that they're in now because somebody else told them they should or whatever, I think it's really hard to take that advice at the very beginning because you don't really have any evidence yet that like following your intuition and making some crazy leaps in some areas is a good idea yet. And so I'm
Mm,
curious for you, like, what were some
mm.
of the first big leaps that you took once you got to the point where it's like, okay, things are possible. Like, let's do this.
Yes. I like to share too, like our intuition's very soft. Like it's like a whisper. And so sometimes our intuition is whispering to us. And then I actually believe that like anything that's big that happens is it's just going to get louder and louder. And so sometimes, for example, it might come off in like a disease or illness or sickness or a loss or an injury. And that's like actually it screaming at you. And so it's the first thing I would say is be in stillness more. Like, how can you set aside time for stillness? And for me, alone time is helpful and also time in nature. And that helps me connect with my intuition. And then when you hear the whispers, like these little signs, and it's also what people call like your gut instinct or these nudges, or like, I just had this feeling, like practice not questioning that, but doing that. And that could be as simple as like, oh, I'm feeling like today I don't want to go to this grocery store. I want to go to this grocery store. And it doesn't have to be big, like, I'm gonna book a one-way flight. It's like, "Oh, I'm actually gonna go do this little thing that interests me or just feels like I should." Um, and that can be proof for yourself of like, "Wow, just this one little switch up showed me something else." Um, and that's what I started doing too, of just, like, listening to these little inner knowings and then acting on them rather than letting your thoughts get in the way of like, "Ah, is that actually true? I don't know," and then you don't do it. Um so I've had so many crazy instances. Also, I believe when you take a leap, I don't know if this happened with you, but like when I chose in 2024 to leave my corporate job, that next month I actually felt I was in like a video game. Like I was everything was connected with synchronicities. One after the other. So also if you are in a place where you leap and do something, like pay attention after too all of these signs and synchronicities which is also just, I feel, rewarding your intuition, being like, good job, you listened. Like, here's
For
proof that
sure.
it's going to work. And it
Yeah, 100%.
can come through like just with proof that your idea is going to work, like, okay, you started your podcast, this is going to happen. And it's like confirmation in a way of listening to your intuition.
Yeah, for sure. I like your advice about following your intuition, not having to be like the big thing at first.
Yeah.
Because I think that tends to be the context that like following your gut or following your calling or following your intuition is going to be. I think it like almost at this point, it's got this connotation where like following your calling means that you have to quit the current job that you're in, start a business doing whatever your hobby is, and then hope that someday it's going to work out, which
Yeah.
is probably far more dramatic than most people are like even
It's not for
need to
everyone.
hear, or like, yeah, it's also not where you start either. Like
Right.
for me, it was easy to be like, yeah, I left my job at the marketing agency and started my own thing. And now 4.5 years later, this is what it looks like. But in reality,
Right.
it really looked like I knew a friend who had a small business who needed some social media help. And I was like, well, I've never done that before, but I have an iPhone and I've got a couple extra hours in the week, so I'll help with that. And then down the line, like, step after step, you end up in a place where that big move looks a lot bigger than it is, because it was actually just a lot of really small steps that led you to a point where it's like, well, technically, if I step over this line right here, I'm in a new state and I'm like doing this new thing. But like, it took a lot of walking to get here. So just because I went from like Idaho to Montana right here, it's one step now. So it looks and sounds crazy, but this is actually the result of like following a lot of little things in order to get there.
Right. And also all the behind the scenes that people don't see too. Like, people will ask, like, did you really just leave with your intuition? Because I talk a lot, like, it was my intuition that told me to leave my corporate job. I did a breathwork session, and within like 1 week, I had booked a breathwork session one Friday night. The next Friday night, I was going to go again. I was living in Cape Town, South Africa. And between that week and the next week, I had left my job. And I also obviously had like some ideas before of like, am I going to leave? Am I not? But like the breath work was this catalyst of like extreme clarity of my intuition just being heightened. And then people
Mm-hmm.
say like, oh, like, did you have any savings? It's like, were you prepared? Like, and there's always some logic when you listen to your intuition as well. It's like, there's so much behind the scenes for you, I'm sure, that people don't see as well, of like your leverage, your connections, your network, like
Yeah,
your ability to know that you have something else that will come too. So it's intuition, but like with a little bit of logic,
for sure.
So
Yeah.
no one's just like quitting their jobs. I think that's where it's swung too far of like, yeah, it sounds good in theory, but if your intuition is telling you that, there needs to be some logic, I think, mixed in with it. Yeah.
For sure. It's also, I think that message also is a lot easier to get engagement with on social media. So I think that
Yeah.
that's why it becomes popular. Is it's a lot more popular, a lot more engaging to say like, I quit my job and I did this and now I'm making 6 figures a month doing blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, sure. Like post your reel, say that, do whatever, because
Yeah.
they're probably selling something. But like, I think that that's part of the reason, and like part of just like the environment that we live in with media right now is like Instagram and TikTok and whatever platform you're on doesn't always lend itself to like talking about the nitty gritty and about the logic and about the hard nights and all that stuff. It's just a lot easier to be like, hey, I'm 6 months in and now I'm doing X amount in MRR and everything's awesome.
Yeah. A highlight reel.
A highlight reel. It's very confusing for people.
Yeah. And I think it depends what channel you're on, because that's why I've gotten less and less interested in videos. Like, it's just so easy to scroll so fast. We consume so much content in like 10 seconds, like, and then you see everyone's highlight reels. Whereas if it's
Hmm.
a platform like Substack or LinkedIn where there's writing, it makes you slow down a little bit to be like, let me read like the nuance of this, rather than just seeing like, oh, this guy has a Lamborghini. Oh, this guy said he hit 6 figures, without actually reading
Yeah.
context. And that's a big problem, I think, with our generation with social media is we compare our lowest experiences in our own perspective to people's highs that they share online. And not many people are sharing the realities or the in-betweens, or we're not taking the time to read them if they are. We're just
Yeah.
scrolling past what we see,
Yeah,
quickly.
100%. What's up, everybody? We're taking a quick pause from the show to ask one small favor. When we were looking at the stats of the show, we noticed that most of the people that listen consistently actually aren't subscribed to the show yet. So the one ask that we have today is if you could take 10 seconds and whatever platform you're listening on right now, head over to our page and hit the subscribe button, and it would be a huge help for us. Growing our subscribers helps us bring on more awesome guests, and it really helps us build a community of people like you that we're trying to foster with this thing. So that's the one ask that we have. Please go hit that subscribe button, and let's get back to the show. So walk me through, so right now we're in Hawaii and you've got this remote job, you've got this unlock of like, hey, things are possible. Walk me through kind of the path that you've been on from that point until where we are today.
Yeah. So I was in Hawaii and Oahu. Amazing. And at that point, I didn't know if I was going to go back to Boston. That was always the backup. Like, okay, if this doesn't really work, if this doesn't feel good, I'm going to go back. And within like the first few weeks, I was like, no, this is awesome. The hard part was the time zone. So for digital nomading, I was working mostly like New York hours, and being in Hawaii, it's a little hard because you like wake up super early. But for some people that are morning people, that's like the best thing ever. It's just like time freedom of knowing when you work best. When I was there, I went with one friend. We booked a one way, and I went with openness of maybe it will be 1 month, maybe it will be my home and I'll move there, or maybe I was interested in nomading too. So I was like, maybe I will keep traveling, but I don't know where I'll go next. We were there. We met two other gals who were also working online. One had an Etsy business, the other was in the financial space, and we all started traveling together. So why I left Hawaii was there wasn't much nomadic entrepreneurial community there. So it's a big thing for nomads too, of like Hawaii felt amazing, but I also felt like I was retired. Like I felt like wow, this is awesome, but I'm starting my career. So I want to be around other creatives, entrepreneurs, people working in general. It was a lot of like, oh, I'm just going to go surf. Like, let's hang out when there's good surf. And it's like, no, I actually have to work like 9 to 5, but in Hawaii time. So that's why we chose next. We went to Mexico. So after that, the group of us went to Mexico, Tulum, which was and still is one of the biggest digital nomad hubs. So I just started researching and got very involved in the digital nomad communities. So where people work all around the world, and went to spots where there was community. And then from there, it was very spontaneous, month to month, essentially, of like, we did Hawaii, then we did Mexico, then we did Panama, we did Costa Rica. Then we went to Europe, traveled all around Europe. Then we went to South Africa. So South Africa was like basically home for me now. I've gone back to Cape Town for the past 3 years, and I'll probably go back again. It's a really special place for me, and a spot where I have community now. But yeah, it was about 5 years now of digital nomading, coming back to New England, which is where I'm from. But at about the 3-year mark of traveling, still with that company, that's when I decided to leave and take space. Like I didn't necessarily have my idea of my company that I have now. It was more just this instinct of, okay, like I've reached my growth capacity there. I loved that role, but it's not my end all be all. So like, what is next? And took that leap, and then had those months of what I call like my dark night of the soul, where I thought it was just going to be I leave and everything's up. And it was I left and this detached from your ego of like, okay, well, who am I now? Like without a corporate title. And also just without, at that time, I like paused nomading for a little bit. I had some stuff going on at home. So I went back to the US, and I'm like, if I'm not a nomad and if I'm not like business development, who am I, And that started my deeper spiritual journey of just coming back home to myself. A lot of really hard months of like, what am I doing? Why? Not questioning why I left, but like, what is next? Never really questioned leaving. It was more of just, what is this space and what am I going through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack with that. Um, it's so cool to me because I think that people being honest about that, I think it like causes people listening to like drop their shoulders and be like, okay, it's not only me. Like I'm not the
Mm,
only one who took a leap on something, or my thing that I hope takes off isn't going as fast as I want it to. Like other people who have seen success have also been in this chapter before.
yeah.
Um, which is, I think it's such an important thing to hear. What I'm the most curious about for you is I also had kind of that weird identity crisis thing where I got
Mm,
done playing football, and
yeah.
I played football my whole life. And obviously you've got like baked in friends when you play sports, you've got some version of status and all of the weird things that come with playing sports. And then I was like, had this cool job where I was like the dude who was traveling a ton and had a cool job and was whatever. And at one point I like was done playing football, no longer worked at this job, and didn't have anything really to attach my like the things I used to attach my worth to didn't exist anymore. And
Yeah.
so I remember having this chapter that sounds similar to yours where I looked around and I was like, okay, well, I've got this new business that's really young and I feel like I kind of suck at that right now. I just started
Mm-hmm.
jujitsu and boxing and I definitely suck at that right now. And like, I just looked around. I was like,
Mm,
used to be good at everything I did and like would rest my self-worth on it. And now I feel like I'm starting at zero with everything. So
yes.
now what do I derive my worth from? Like that question,
Mm,
who am I? And so
right.
I'm really curious for you how you like sunk in that moment and what some of that reflection looked like for you.
Yes. It's that question like, yeah, who am I without the titles? And I think on a deeper level, like when our ego identifies with these titles, that's like that feels good to us. And then when we don't have that, it begs the question more of like, well, who am I if I don't do anything? Who are you? And how can you just be happy with yourself without these performative things, right? Without being good at sports, like can you still be who you are? And I'm the same way, very much a high achiever. So it's like the next achievement is was my worth for so long until you realize like that's exhausting to chase too, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure.
Um yeah. What was the last question that you said?
I really want to just like sink into like what your process was when you got to that moment that you're just like, I'm stripped away of all of the things I used to derive my identity from.
Yeah.
How did you go about like finding it during that time? And what was like the felt sense as you were kind of like sifting through all of that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's also slowing down. Like when I really paused and waited, then the answers became more clear there too of like what was next. And I mean, it was really, really difficult. And then at the time, I believe like when the student is ready, the teacher will come too. So that's when I started my meditation and my yoga teacher training. So that's when I hired a mentor, hired a coach, and just really like was open to support and open to that next chapter, and also just deeper understanding of what I was going through. Um, and that's also when I had a pivotal time with LinkedIn because at that time I was posting and writing pretty much daily on LinkedIn. I had grown my audience when I left corporate to about like 10K followers on LinkedIn right when I left corporate. So it was substantial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and basically, I had two questions like, okay, I can stop posting on LinkedIn until I have a title, or I can wait, um, or I don't wait, right? And I just post all through this journey from what I say, like the soul perspective of like soul led, like, okay, without a title, these are all of what I'm learning. And I'm sure you've felt this too, like all of these
Mm.
learnings that are deeper than a corporate title. Like you actually grow a lot more in this in between phase. So I shared openly all through the months I had no idea. So very much the opposite of a highlight reel of just like, I
Yeah.
just left. And what was my motivation was I was wishing I saw that content on LinkedIn because you log on and
Ooh.
it's like, I'm excited to announce I got promoted. I'm excited to announce I launched a company. And it's like, am I the only one leaving or am I the only one that's like figuring it out? And I wanted to be the change that I was hoping to see on the platform. And so I wrote openly and yeah, I consider it a lot of like healing in public. And when I became more vulnerable and authentic on my journey, I like pretty much doubled my follower growth that couple of months without a title. And I was like, wow, people want authenticity. And I started making polls like, do you feel you can be your true self on LinkedIn? Almost everyone voted no. Or do you
Yeah.
feel, yeah, do you feel you're being your authentic self? It's like, no. And I'm like, why are we all showing up so inauthentically? And that's when I grew my community so that when I did go to launch my business, it was like everyone was on board. So I think there's a lot of power of building in public too. And getting through that hard time for anyone listening who's in a hard time, I also believe that the opposite of depression, if you're experiencing that or that comes along with your kind of identity shift, it's like opposite of depression is self-expression. So any way you can express yourself, if it's a podcast, if it's writing, if it's painting, I believe that really helps us heal too, or get more clarity on like, wow, I love speaking, I love writing, I love dancing. And if we don't try until we're amazing at it, then we're never gonna be able to heal in that way or find the path that actually is for us.
100%. It's an interesting thing for me because I think that I tend to be a very like self-reflective person when things kind of like go sideways. And I feel like those
Yeah.
are the moments where I do learn the most because I've got the most questions about
Yeah.
like, where did this go wrong? How am I going to come out of this? Where is the lessons in this? Where's the learning? And so while by all means, I'm not begging for any difficult moments anytime soon in that way. It is a gold
Yeah, knock
mine
on
for
some
like,
wood or something.
yeah, seriously. It's like for learning yourself and learning more about the world, it's like the difficult times is definitely the way to speed run that. However,
Yeah.
I do find in a lot of ways, I was just on the phone yesterday with one of my mentors and she was like, wow, like I see on Instagram, like it looks like you're really happy right now and just crushing it with the move and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, if you look at it on Instagram, you'll also see that there's quite a few like pretty big gaps between when some of those posts were and blah, blah, blah. I was like, those big gaps between those posts are when I really wasn't doing very good because there's a lot that's come with this. There's a lot of things that have happened in my personal life. And I just tend to be like, okay, well, sometimes the most authentic way to show up on social media to me is not showing up at all. Right. It's like if I were processing and like trying to go through something in my personal life in the real world, I probably wouldn't be standing on the street corner shouting about it and being like, hey, everybody, this is what I'm learning and this is what I'm thinking about. And here it is. Hope you like it too. And so that's been one of the things that I was the most interested in when I was going through some of your content is like,
Yeah.
the internet is a very vulnerable place to show up regardless of how you show up, whether it's your highlight reel or whether it's, whether you are somebody who's a bit more open. And then sharing things like your struggles and your spirituality is like even another level of vulnerability that you're showing up with. And so I'm very curious as somebody who is trying to be as vulnerable and authentic as I can. Like, how did you continue to develop that muscle where you could like get more and more comfortable first starting showing up authentically and then like continuing to be more vulnerable as you went?
Yeah. I think it's asking yourself. The first thing is like, what content do you resonate with? Because for me, and likely for you or the listeners, it's like we do like real vulnerable content of other creators that we follow. And so if that's the case, we're all mirrors for each other. And so if that does resonate with you, likely people that follow you will also want that same realness. And I'm still challenged by levels of vulnerability that I feel I can still lean into. With the caveat, I will say, because I do help people be, with visibility and with being more authentic with their personal brands, I also think there's a fine line of oversharing. Like, I do think the pendulum has swung a little of like, I don't think everything should be online. I think if you're processing something, you don't need to share everything. I think it has swung a bit that like your personal brand isn't your diary. I think that you can journal, you can process things. And if it fits into like your personal brand strategy where what you're sharing that's vulnerable helps your ideal customer, marketing terms. If that helps that
Hmm.
person, then it's worth sharing. But like, I still check myself if there's something I feel called to share. But then with the strategy like I built, then I think like, okay, but does it check that box? No, like it's just this vulnerable share that doesn't necessarily have an outcome. So I think that's going to be really powerful for founders who are considering what to share that's vulnerable and when to share it. And then also with the awareness as you consume that, even authentic vulnerable content is still curated to some degree.
Yeah.
It's the reality because people choose what they are even sharing that's vulnerable. Um, but yeah, and I would say too, yeah, thinking about the powerful content creators that you follow that are vulnerable. And then two, people buy from people, right? So it's like we've seen a huge shift with the power of a personal brand and building in public. There's one woman that I helped. She's building a non-toxic athletic brand, and the product isn't even complete. She's still behind the scenes, like creating it, but she's built her brand so vulnerably about her own health issues and why behind the product. Her wait list is like blowing up because the product's not even ready, but just because people are so bought in on her story and her issues that she's had with health. And like, if she never shared that and only said like, here's the leggings, like, awesome, this
Yeah.
is the end product. But she'll say like, I just went to Portugal and I lost all this money, or this was so stressful and this isn't going right, or like the product that was supposed to be done is not done. And those posts actually do the best. And people are bought in on it, then they join the wait list. So it's like rewiring your brain that like, is it actually a failure, or is it just deepening trust with your audience of their realities?
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really interesting thing to
mm,
me is to think about like what is helpful for the person that you're writing for. And a
yeah.
lot of times like one of the most helpful things when I think about like my audience, especially for this podcast, is like what
Yeah.
did me 5 years ago need to hear? What
Yes.
conversations, what people, what I've listened to. And like that has been one of the most helpful filters. But I really like your advice with that because I think that it gives a little bit of like freedom or like a useful framework to be like, okay, here's where the line between your journal entries and the things that you talk to your mom about and to your dog,
Mm-hmm.
this is where those live. And then for the things that could be helpful to, let's just say you 5 years ago, that is
Yeah.
what then you choose to share because there's some stuff that is just like you complaining about stuff being hard or you being sad
Yeah.
about things that don't belong on the internet.
Yeah.
And I do think, I think that that's a really helpful tool to be able to make a decision on is like, okay, do we just post this video of me crying on the internet because I think that I'm supposed to be vulnerable, or is this actually
Right.
being helpful somewhere?
Yeah. I see a lot of content and I'm like, I just want to give this person a hug. Like, I don't even like, it's deeper than like it's almost like they're asking for support in a way less than like this post is powerful to who I'm trying to reach. Um, these three things, like I always say, specific for LinkedIn, but this can apply to any channel, is know your intention of why you're on the platform. Also, so many times people are like, I just know I need to be on LinkedIn, so I need your help. And then I'm like, what is your intention? Because it's so much more powerful when you actually know why you're on it, right? It's like, oh, I want it for this reason or this reason. But the other piece is knowing who you're talking to. So many people start building a brand being vulnerable without actually knowing who you want to talk to. And that helps a
Hmm.
lot with vulnerability as well. Of like, okay, you should be able to send your posts, every single one you write to your audience. And if you can't, then it's not necessarily building a strong personal brand, right? It could just be this like open diary. Um, so knowing like who you want to talk to, your intention. And then like also I say for a more soul-led authentic brand, like how do you want people to feel? And like if you follow those three, I consider myself multi-passionate. So I can talk about a lot of different things, but if all three are always aligned, my intention, who I want to attract and how I want people to feel, then it's a strong personal brand too, which can be applied to any channel. But I think it helps with vulnerability because it can swing a little far. And then all of a sudden you're just like trauma dumping on the internet
Yeah.
without knowing who you're talking to, why you're posting, or making people actually feel like not good at the end of the post. So for me, I always want to leave someone feeling like really great after they read my content, even if it's vulnerable. And like I make sure all my content ends with that same emotion. because it can feel heavy. If someone consumes something and it's like, what was the point, right? Like, does it
Yeah.
go back to how your purpose of your brand? Yeah.
Yeah. Why did I just let myself ruin my mood by reading this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting to me. So one of the things that I think people face often when they decide to start creating content is I love this picture of Cringe Mountain. And it's this mountain that
Yeah.
you've got to climb of like finally showing up in person and wondering like what your old coworkers are going to think, wondering what your parents and your friends and like, it's like, okay, well, now everybody who knows me is going to see me trying this new thing that I'm probably going to suck at first. That's a little scary. So how do you approach that idea of Cringe Mountain and feeling like things like are cringy when you're first starting, and how do you help people get over that?
I love this question. The first mastermind I ever did was a guest session on a friend's community, and it was called like how to not be cringe on LinkedIn. But I feel it's
Love it.
always cringe. Like it's always cringe. Um, I think it comes from inner work first of releasing your limiting beliefs. I do this exercise where you write down all of your limiting beliefs, like what will this person from my hometown think? What will my parents think? What will my friends think? And then you cross it out and you actually write the opposite. And that exercise itself, I still do it. And I have everyone that I ever work with do it too. It's really, really powerful. It actually rewires your limiting beliefs before it. And then also
Interesting.
a reminder of like going back to who you want to attract. It's so important to be clear on that because I'm sure your who you want to attract is not people from your past, or maybe it is like your cousin or your person you went to high school with or your last coworker, but the chances are it's not. And so when you're so clear on your intention and your who and how you want people to feel, it's not going to probably align with your limiting beliefs. And so actually, if you rewrite your limiting beliefs into something else, that's going to align with like your higher self or your future self that's going to step into that. Um, and I say a lot like it's scary, especially on LinkedIn. That's why it's the biggest test, I think, that platform, because you worry about, I say like as a spiritual female, entrepreneurial, like nomadic woman in her 20s, I'm like, I was scared of what John from corporate was going to think of my
Yeah.
content. But you have to think like, am I writing for John? And if I don't speak my truth because of John from corporate, that's doing a disservice to everyone else that can't find me. And then I also use the example of like Sally from high school, like these fears of people from our past of like, but we're not writing for them. And then also as you step deeper into this truth, you're weeding out everyone that's not meant for you. Like I use the
Mm.
analogy, like we hear the word magnetic, right? Magnetic personal branding, but magnetic stems from magnet, and magnets attract, but we also don't realize that they repel. So that process is uncomfortable, and some people don't want to step into vulnerability and being a magnetic personal brand because of the repelling piece, because it's scary. Like, but that's
Yeah.
part of it. And you're going to bring in all of the people that are for you and can find you, the more authentic you are.
100%. And I think that this is similar to what we were talking about with like trusting your intuition and how that builds almost like momentum and success with itself.
Yes.
Because deciding to be vulnerable and deciding to like just accept the fact that it's a little bit cringy in the beginning. I think it's one of those things, again, where it's the hardest in the beginning because you have no proof that it's going to work or no proof that there are the people that you're going to attract and that the right people are going to repel away. Because your starting blocks are everybody has a certain perception of who I am. And it seems like the people in my life like me for that. And I'm scared that if I show who I really am, then those people who like me right now will no longer continue to do that. And I think what's really cool about deciding to like start putting stuff out there is it is shitty when you see sometimes like your follower count start to slip, or you like find out like, oh my gosh, like they're not following me anymore. I got caught in a DM thread where somebody accidentally sent me a video where they were shit talking me for like whatever I was doing. Like all of those things can happen and probably will happen. But I think what's what's really cool is like the more that you continue to put yourself out there, and if your message is like aligned with who you are, you
Yeah.
start to get a lot of really good moments where like somebody will find you and send you a DM and be like, hey, I really needed this today. This is, you helped me with this, that, and the other thing. And you'd never get to those moments if you don't just like start in the first place when it does suck. And like,
Yeah.
you're going to have some of that, like almost like a rubber band effect where like you have to go a little bit backwards in order to like slingshot forwards.
Definitely. Yeah, and that everyone starts somewhere. It's like we see people's end result. But I think it's always an interesting curve. And also you have to be delusional to start. I believe that. So it's also scary when you can see the vision yourself as a visionary, as the person starting a project or a business, but no one else can. And there's like this like curve that I see and I feel I'm in where it's like people think you're crazy, people judge you, you get a lot of questions, maybe people unfollow you. And then there's a curve that comes back of like, oh, I know her, or like I went to school with
Yeah.
her, or like, oh, and then it's like, oh, now you're coming back around. Like
Yeah. Good to
it's
see
a
you again.
curve. Yeah. So I think it's just trusting your own path, and also the bright side and the flip side is I've met some amazing people that I would have never met if I did not show up in this new version of myself, and shout out the ones that was just like a past version of me too. Um
100%.
Amazing connections, and from LinkedIn, like I think I've probably met over like 200 people now from LinkedIn, coffee chats, connections of just like aligned people that have changed my life because of how I've showed up. And then too, the messages, like you say, like I get a lot of messages, which is sad, but like I can't even like your content or comment on your content on LinkedIn because I don't want my boss to see that I even liked it. Like people so out of alignment that sometimes they can't even like something because it will show it to maybe their boss. So people are living in such fear that even if we lose followers or we don't have the amount of likes that we want, it doesn't mean that people aren't being impacted by our content too. So I always remember that and I share that a lot because content that's different too doesn't necessarily get the outward results that maybe our minds want, but like people are still being impacted by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest benefits towards being online in the first place and like being outward about a message that you care about is if you are truly yourself in those ways, it actually does a really good job of like pre-sorting the people that you meet in real life. And one of the things that I found that's really cool about it is I have met a handful of people now who listen to the podcast or have consumed like some of the content that I put on my personal page.
Yeah.
And by the time I meet them, they've already it's like this parasocial relationship where they might have consumed 100 hours of me yapping on the internet, and they come into it already pre-sorted that like we see life in very similar ways. We, like probably enjoy the same people, probably like have a lot in common already. And so it's actually been a really cool filter for life where like, I'm sure that there's people I haven't met because they've seen what I've talked about and been like, I'm never talking to that dude. But the people who will like seek me out or who will like come into my life almost like pre-sorted, I think is the best way to say it for like, hey dude, I already like you. So we can just skip all of that other stuff and like, let's get into it. It's been one of the coolest, like real life benefits, I guess, of like being on the internet with the podcast and that stuff is like, you actually end up meeting a lot of cool people and kind of getting to like sift it without having to meet a million people first.
Yes. And I think it's also with that, like just you more deeper in your own authenticity. And that's just like, now I see it now, like you only meet people at their same frequency in a way. So like you probably are just shifting in terms of who you're naturally attracting as well. And so like you just find you don't really meet the same people that you met before. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden I'm meeting other creatives or entrepreneurs or people with podcasts or perfect guests because you are in your alignment, which is really cool to see too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious for you. We were talking a little bit before we got started that one of the things that I find to be the most interesting about you is you've got this really cool balance of being fully yourself and being willing to be yourself on the internet, which those two things are hard to make happen at the same time a lot of times. But you've also like very clearly got a great business head on your shoulders. Like you've got, years of experience building businesses and in marketing. And I love that you don't shy away from either of them. Like most people in the spiritual space aren't using the words KPIs or ICPs or like talking about about things in a way where like it makes sense in the business world. And so I'm curious for you, like, how do you balance the two things, and how do you help people who you're working with balance their spirituality and their own like authentic personal sense, but also help them show up professionally where you don't get lost in either of those?
Such a good question. It's interesting. For the context, actually, so I studied psychology in undergrad and I started getting into marketing. And this just feels like an important part of the story. I was going to UMass Amherst, and I remember as a freshman going to like the open house to potentially apply to transfer into the business school because I was like, I see myself as a business leader. And I went in there probably wearing something like this, like a scarf and very like, feminine, whatever. And probably had like my macho. And I go in and it's all like corporate, suited, like 60 plus white men, which is fine. But I immediately kind of felt like, oh, wow, like I don't know if I can be in business, like I don't know if I fit this room. And then I meet them and immediately they're like, oh, by the way, like if you're thinking of applying, like your GPA needs to be at least this. So like if you think that you're like close to that, you can apply. And I remember feeling just depleted of like, I don't know if I consider myself a business person. I definitely don't identify with anyone else I see in the room. And I never even applied. I remember being like, actually, I'm not going to take an application. My GPA is actually higher than that, but like just by how they approached me, I didn't even apply. And I feel that looking back, it's a big part of my story because I want to be a leader in business for women that don't have to fit a certain mold. So I appreciate you saying that, like that you see that in the content. And I think just that business and leadership can look and feel different. And I think blending the two is a big part of my purpose of like, especially like, yes, degrees help, titles help, but at the same time, I feel a lot of us are intuitive leaders. Like we know how to lead, we know this, and not necessarily having to be in a certain role to be that. And so I used to go so far in one way. And then I also used to go, sometimes it's like, okay, well, then we don't show our spirituality at all to be considered taken seriously. And then I've found this middle edge of like, actually, spirituality has made me a better business owner and leader. And the way I live actually makes it better. So blending the two is actually where the magic is. And if you look at some of the most successful creators, they have a spiritual practice. It's just not talked about. And actually, I don't know if you've listened. I mean, she's a business gal, I guess. Madonna was on Jay Shetty's podcast. And I never had heard her talk about her spiritual life, but the episode was so powerful because she was just like, yeah, I've been doing this my whole career, but like, I don't talk about it. And I'm like, you know how many people probably have a secret spiritual life that they don't talk about, which is the foundation of a successful business,
Right.
And for me, I got my business idea during meditation, and almost every single creative idea comes in meditation. So I think we can not talk about it, or we can honor it, and that might actually help other people too.
Yeah.
So I really feel both sides can be together, and I also felt like I wasn't meeting anyone else that was like that. And I call it like ambitious Zen of like, I feel very ambitious. I do want to like be a part of, not corporate, but like the working world. But I also want to be a part of the spiritual practices, and blending those two, I think, is actually how we make the world a better place. We don't just like hide off in yoga retreats. It's like, how do we do that? And then bring it back to a platform like LinkedIn where change can really happen.
Yeah. And also bring it back like into the real world too. Like some of the best people who I've gotten to learn from and in some instances work for are people who like, you'll go to war for them and do whatever, like help them with whatever their mission is because you care about the person. It's just like what you were saying with the gal that you were referencing earlier who's got the athletic line is like people are voting for her. They're voting for her story. And I think that I think that that's such an important thing, like whether you're leading teams or you're helping people or you're giving advice or you're reflecting in public, like to show up as a real person is such a cool thing. And I think that
Yes.
it's very helpful for people to like have that mirror and be like, okay, it is other people too.
Hmm.
Um, but in so many ways, I think that most people who have gotten into business or any kind of creative venture has found that it's like a very symbiotic relationship where business in a lot of ways like forces you to become a better person because of
Mm.
having to lead and sell and sit in the fire and also celebrate wins. Like it's just kind of a breeding ground for personal development. And also personal development by itself and learning yourself and the more that you can do to just like kind of build who you are as a person, that also then turns around and like helps in the business because people enjoy
Yep.
working for you more and doing business with you and you've got more clarity for what you want to give to the world. And so I really do think that it's a cool thing to see somebody like promoting the fact that there is that symbiotic relationship and
Hmm.
not just focusing on one or the other, because I think that that's kind of where it gets kind of icky and people start to like lose the credibility on one side or the other.
Yes. I love that. I like to say, like, we set out to build a business, but then the business builds us, and you see
Yeah.
every single shadow that you have of like, "Oh, that's something I need to address or work on," and if you don't, you can't get to the next level of what you need, and a lot of it at first for me was, like, visibility of, like, the ability to be seen, to take up space,
Hmm.
and that's now what I help other people with too, um, but also I think with the it's easier. So I work with, I say, like, soul-led female leaders, conscious leaders, and these are people who sometimes have been in corporate for years, and then they have this, like, identity shift. Maybe they go out and build their own business, or they're a yoga teacher, they run retreats, and then the first thing most people wanna do is delete LinkedIn. Like, "Oh, thank God I'm out of that that world," and I think that's the problem is, like, if we have these different paths, that's the light and the voice that that platform actually needs. It's like bringing this other world into that world, and like that blend I feel is very much a part of what I'm supposed to do. And so that visibility part comes first of like, well, first you have to feel comfortable being seen as you
Hmm.
are. And then once that feels okay, then it's just constantly kind of blending the two worlds. And there's a strategy to that too, because of course you can't, what might make sense in like a yoga circle, a conversation's not going to resonate the same if you just write it exactly as that conversation is. It's like, how do you meet someone where they're at? That's the best way for content to be interpreted as well, you know?
Yeah. So when you got to the point where you are now and you're doing, it sounds like a lot of self work to figure out like, okay, I left this job that I've had for a handful of years that's allowed me to travel and I've like kind of got this like square one thing. And
Mm.
then you get the idea for the business that you have now and you start to build on that. Why did you choose a path that you did now? Like, why LinkedIn? Why the specific people that you help?
Mm.
For people who are listening up to this point, they're like, wow, obviously, Paige has a lot of like perspective on both the spiritual world and the business world.
Mm.
Why did you choose to blend all of that together in the way that you have now?
Yeah. So for LinkedIn in particular, I've always felt drawn to it. Looking back, it's like we were talking about those breadcrumbs. It's like I think in the moment it's hard to know what your path is, but if we from this moment look back, it's like, oh wow, like it kind of felt like a little GPS without us knowing. And
Hmm.
I even in high school, I remember being drawn to LinkedIn. Like this platform's a no-brainer. Like you can go connect with any person that you really want and get in front of them, send them a message. Every single job I've gotten has been from LinkedIn, but not from applying, from like messaging the founder, being like, hey, this is what I could do and this is why I want to work there. And just the power of also a personal brand on there. It's like your safety net for yourself. So I've always felt drawn to it. And then when I was in the tech sales space, I got to a point where most tech sales people do cold calling, and I tried and I did not like it. And I built my personal brand around the product I was selling and pretty much hit quota, surpassed quota from inbound messages
Wow.
where people knew, like, oh, this girl sells, it was a text message marketing platform to e-commerce brands. Like, if I need it, I'm going to DM her because I was open about what I was selling. mixed with my personal brand of like, I'm meditating here, I'm traveling here, like, and then they cared. Like they'd be like, I want to book a meeting to learn about it, but I also want to hear about how you're in Hawaii. Or I also
Yeah.
meditated, like, and I realized like this is so powerful. Helped like people on my team post there. And then I had this unlock of like, okay, this is promoting a tech sales product, but what if I actually could use my platform to like speak about these topics that I feel are even more important, you know? Not that tech sales isn't important. But that's when I had my podcast. I promoted my podcast on LinkedIn, which was helping people travel, work remotely. And then when I went through my hard time, it was also using LinkedIn to be that change of like being more vulnerable and then building in public. And then now that's the medium that which most people find me, and all my clients pretty much come through LinkedIn. And anyone I support, they have inbound clients. Once you establish your intention, it's like, okay, they know what you are, they know what they can come to you for. And it's almost like this website, you know, it's like they search it and they know to come to you for something. So yeah, I've always felt called to that. And then for me specifically, I support men and women, but women, I feel LinkedIn's a very corporate, masculine, rigid platform. And not
Okay.
masculine just with men, masculine energy too, right? It's like all of these highlight reels of what it is. Um,
Very like KPI and like data driven place
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. And even masculine energy in a way of like, yeah, like performance, achievements without this like soul, you know, of like, this is who I am. This is, and so that's also the mission and the why is to get more soul-led content and also more of my own role models and who inspires me. Typically, these are people doing things different that don't have a LinkedIn. They're on Instagram. You know, they're on different platforms. And I think those voices, more than others, should be highlighted and amplified and shown on LinkedIn as also a path of success. Um, so that's kind of the blend of both
Yeah.
with the mission.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. It's reminding me really closely about one of the things that we talk about in like martial arts quite a bit
Hmm.
is a lot of the coaches that I've had, whether it's boxing coaches or jiu-jitsu coaches, almost all of them say the same thing. And it's that when they started instructing, their own game as a competitor got significantly better.
Mm.
And so I'm curious for you, having so many years of reflection under your belt and having been like publicly building on the platform and like kind of like doing all the things that you coach people to do now anyways,
Mhm.
what was the transition like going from doing a lot of this for yourself to then starting your business that you have now and like teaching other people to do the same thing? Did you notice
Yeah.
any transformation like in your own spirituality or in your own like practices with some of that once you started teaching other people?
Yeah. So when I started teaching other people, I think it's just the deepest level of fulfillment that I've ever felt because it's like I've tested this strategy on my own, but to see it work and to see the transformation in other people, it's like then it just makes you feel it's even a deeper satisfaction than myself. And seeing the transformations and what a personal brand can do, it's like I know it's powerful, but then you see it in your students and the people that you've helped and how it's changed their lives. It's like a whole other level. And then learning from them. I think when you are so clear on who you want to help or your client, I am like every single person that I work with, I feel they are my role models in some way too. Like I'm working right now. She's amazing. She just launched a book. She's 60 and she launched a book. She's running women's retreats. She's been a coach for like 30 years. And every time I get on a call, I'm like, I believe if you're in your purpose in a way, or like you are aligned with who you want to help, you should feel so excited and be learning from also your clients or your customers too. So I feel I'm always learning from them beyond LinkedIn, also just like in all parts of what they offer. And also in the program, I give space for everyone to run their own session on whatever their gift is. So I'm
Mm.
always like receiving from, we've had hypnotherapy sessions and Reiki, and we've done like flow state sessions and yeah, just really beautiful different ways to receive, like always learning from other people that I'm helping too.
That's such a cool thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes back to like if you're what you're putting out is aligned and the people who show up are also aligned with that same thing, it's like it's a very good breeding ground for a lot of positive stuff. I love that.
Yeah. And I've had people, which is my favorite thing too, like hire each other. So there's a cohort.
Mm,
They all like two people like send me a selfie. They're hanging out. They met in person. One gal runs retreats. The other gal went to her retreat. And one person hired the other person to run her marketing. And I'm like, I love that. Like that to
so
me feels
cool.
so satisfying because it's like they felt so alone. Then they meet a whole other group of people who are so similar to them with that like ambitious Zen combo of like, oh wow, I didn't know I'd find my, spiritual community also on LinkedIn. It's like a unique blend that I don't feel most people identify with. So it's cool when I see the power that the community has beyond just your LinkedIn brand. It's a lot bigger than that too.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is bringing me to a realization that I had about a year ago. And it was the idea of like the felt sense of giving versus extracting. And
Mm,
what it sounds like for your story is, you were able to leverage this strategy of being on LinkedIn and sharing and like utilizing that to like crush it in your tech sales job, and that allowed you to travel and do all this stuff.
mm,
Um, to me, I've been in places like that before where I'm like, I find a way to like execute a strategy that helps me get whatever resources I need, so then I can go do whatever else I want to do in my life.
mhm.
However, the felt sense of that is like, well, okay, that's cool, but how long is this going to last? Is like, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like this, like I'm extracting something from the world and I've found a way to give it like one thing and it'll give me two things back. And as long as we can keep
Yes.
that trade going, things will be okay.
Yeah.
Whereas if instead of extracting, instead if you're giving, that feels so much better and it feels more sustainable because it's like, okay, if I can give the right thing to the world and that's the only thing I'm focused on, eventually it all comes back and it comes back way bigger than things do when I'm
Yeah.
just like focused on this one little extraction, like exchange over here. So I'm curious for you if you resonate with that
Yeah.
in your story of like extracting in the tech sales thing versus giving now, where
Mm.
you've got like in-person impact, you've got online impact. Like it seems like there's been a shift in your journey between those two things.
Yes. Yeah, and in the moment, I really like that analogy. I haven't heard of it. And in the moment in tech sales, it was amazing. Like I had this 1 month, and it was amazing to unlock the power of the personal brand with freedom, right? So mixed in with, I was in Tulum in the January, so it was freezing in Boston. I'm with all my close friends working from like this lounge bed, essentially. And I had hit quota at like 2 weeks into the month. And I'm like, what is life? Have a call with my
Yeah.
boss on this bed, and she's like, yeah, like, I'm happy you're happy. And then you have unlimited PTO at your tech sales job. So then you're like, okay, I can take off. So then I have 2 weeks off in Mexico because of the power of LinkedIn, and like knowing how to create a strategy where you stand for what you are selling or offering. Um, with that too, it made it really hard when I felt not as happy and I wanted to leave because at one moment it's so amazing. So back to what we talked about earlier, like something can be so amazing in the beginning and then at the end it's like, why do I want to leave? Um, but yeah, I think with the giving piece now, something in entrepreneurship that I think is uncomfortable for most is how much free value we have to give. I mean, you probably know this better than anyone with your podcast. It's so much time to create content, to everything that goes on behind the scenes. And for me, I've been writing on LinkedIn for years, like almost 6 times a week posting. And so it's always funny. I meet someone like, wow, I wish I had like 40K connections. And it's like, you could. You just have to post every day for about 4 years, and you
Yeah.
also might be able to,
Right.
like, so it's the giving, but it feels fulfilling, I think, when there's that intention and knowing your why. Like, I know my why so clearly that that's what fuels me, and I do for, like, almost a year now, I've been doing monthly free masterminds, bringing people together that want to show up on LinkedIn from a more soul aligned place. Those are so fulfilling. Like just the people that are coming, and just being able to give what I wish I had, like what you said, what you wish your younger self had. It's so amazing. So definitely just feeling more fulfilled in my alignment, and also knowing it's for my own mission. Like the other one, I guess the first model that you said, it's like to live a life that feels fulfilling. But then once I had that, I'm like, what else? Like I have this freedom, I
Mhm.
have time off, I have financial resources. So what's the next step of like deeper than that? Um, I think both are important in different times too of your life of like what you need.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I think both are important too. It's like, if you're entirely in your alignment and you're giving and this and that, like you could very easily be a homeless dude painting and feel totally in your alignment, but you do need to figure out a way to like pay the bills at the end of the day also. So I think
Yeah.
finding a way where all of that is like all of like the water is flowing in the right direction. I think
Right.
it's just kind of like there's just kind of the main idea with that.
Yes. And I have met some people who are like, it's so interesting. That's why I'm also interested in happiness and fulfillment, because I've met people in other countries from traveling like that don't have much and they're so happy. And it just makes our
Yeah.
minds, especially as me, as an American from the East Coast, like, how are you so happy? Like,
Right.
without all these things that I think in the US we can like contribute to happiness. So there's definitely levels to it. And I think it just depends also culturally on if you have enough to get by. And then if that's enough, then some people in their purpose feel happy with that,
Yeah.
or
Were there
not any
any
extra.
specific Yeah. Were there any specific moments as you were traveling that you saw something or experienced something that really brought that to the forefront for you? Is that happiness might not be derived from having a sweet
Mm,
tech job where you can crush it and then be on vacay for the remaining 3 weeks of each month?
yes. This one story is coming to mind. I'll share it. It's not really like directly related to your question because it is, I guess, about something that's uh I'll share the story. So I was living in Cape Town, South Africa. We got really close to our like front desk worker. So like he's technically a security guard, but he like works at the front desk when people come in. He's originally from South Africa and we got like really close friends, but he had never really left his area that he was from. He lived in like the township area, which in South Africa is like the very poor area, not very safe. But he came to work every day. He was just like amazing, so vibrant, always so happy. And um, my friend and I got a collaboration with this helicopter company. We had already gone on this helicopter in Cape Town. You fly over the whole city. We had already gone once and they were like, "Oh, you guys can come back again and we'll do content and you guys can go up for free." And we're like, "Okay, we can go again," which would be awesome, but like what if we took our security guard and surprised him? And the marketing helicopter person was like, "Sure, yeah." I mean, he didn't see the vision, but I was like, "No, this is going to be so epic." And we took him, but we surprised him on his day off and we picked him up in an Uber. And this is where I realized, like, he was like, "I've never been in an Uber. Like, who is the driver? Who is this? Like, I only ever take the bus, like public transportation." And I'm like, wow, we just like order Ubers on our cell phone and we don't think anything of it. So he was in awe. Also, we drove like 30 minutes to this hotel where the helicopter was coming in. And he was like, "I've never seen this view before." And I'm like, "You live 30 minutes, but he doesn't have a car and he works every day." And
Yeah.
so that was a big realization. Then when the helicopter came, I'll have to show you the video. I've never seen so much joy ever. Like he was so surprised. And then he was in the helicopter and he was like seeing his whole city from above that he like never actually has seen. And he's never been, and he said his whole family has never been like in a plane or a helicopter or anything. So that comes to mind just because it's like obviously a helicopter experience is not like our norm, but like it's relatively accessible sometimes on vacation to do something that's fun like that. And
Mhm.
for someone that's there, it's just like he had never been in an Uber. He had never driven 30 minutes beyond his work because he didn't have a car and didn't really have time. Um, Yet, like, he brings so much more joy and vibrancy than most other people I meet that have so much more. So I think that story, obviously the helicopter is not like simple, but like just
Yeah.
the context of what is kind of more normal to us and like really drastic to him. And he's like, oh, this is my legacy. Like, I'll tell my family about this helicopter. Like, just the perspective shift of like, we get on planes and sometimes complain about flying, like, oh, I don't want to take another flight. And it's like, this
Yeah.
guy was so appreciative just to see his city from above. Um, so yeah, that story's special.
That's so cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. It's so interesting too. Like, it's so interesting how much like the mountaintop moments are preached and how
Yeah.
little I seem to realize every time I reach one versus when I have a moment like that where I'm like in a different country and meet somebody where I'm like I met when I was 18, I went to Jamaica with my dad and we were right next. So the resort is like goes out on this beach and then there's like this little like peninsula kind of thing that like runs right at the edge of the resort. And on the other side of the resort is just like a regular like shantytown neighborhood. There's a lot of like aluminum sheet houses. There's a lot of plywood houses, like definitely, you know, like they're in the cuts for sure. And along the side of this like chain link fence on the side of the resort, there's like this little sandbar kind of thing. And all of the people from the neighborhood who were like craftspeople would come and they would sell like wood figurines, or they would sell paintings, or they would sell, you know, fresh conch or whatever they had available.
Yeah.
And I was just curious and went over there and started chatting with these guys. And my dad was a big reggae nerd growing up. So immediately I was like, oh my gosh, these are like, you know, real Rastas. This is awesome. But I ended up talking to this dude for like 2 hours. And he's this Rastafarian guy named Rupert who's got no teeth. He's like 70 years old. And just like the most yellow, I've been smoking weed since I was 12, eyes that you've ever seen. And I just had one of the most intense, like spiritual, like life conversations with this dude. And I remember I bought his painting and I've got it in my room still. But I remember like walking away from that and being like, this dude has probably been here for years and years and years. Who knows how many conversations he's had, but like, the way that he looks at the world, even though he lives in a literal plywood box and finds fulfillment in painting and then just like having genuine conversations with people and getting them out of the like, I'm going to pay for every experience here kind of vibe that you get on vacation.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, I was 18 and I was like, I hope that I have a purpose that feels as aligned as this dude one day. And on paper, yeah, and on paper, there's nothing there that's like, yeah, I want to be next to homeless, I want to be toothless, and I want to be living next to a resort peddling stuff on a sandbar.
That's the secret to success.
I guess it is. It's just like the Mexican fisherman story, I guess. But yeah, I just think it's really,
I was
really
going to share
important.
that story. I love that
Do
you
it.
know that story.
Hit it. Get in there.
Well, you already know the story.
Well, not everybody listening does. I think it's an important one.
Yeah, I've posted about this a little because I feel that's also the premise of a big learning that I have felt traveling, especially anytime I go to Mexico, because it's related to that. But essentially, it's that we, you know, as Americans, prepare, plan our whole life to work and, you know, make our money working, saving to eventually be able to sell it and then, you know, go live in a small fishing village, maybe in Mexico. And then when we see someone doing that already, you know, like we go to Mexico and we see someone there, we come in and we're like, what if you scaled this and hired this person and did this? And then you can profit like that. And then the villager is basically like, what is the point of that when I can just do this now, you know, and actually enjoy your life and enjoy your days. So it's an interesting concept and something that I really refer back to of like, one of my favorite quotes is like, how you spend your days is how you spend your life. Because I think we can easily zoom out and be like, okay, how do I want to live my life in general versus just being like, how do I spend my everyday? And if you focus on how you spend your days, that's going to be way more powerful than having this big old dream for your life later on. It's like if you actually just enjoy what you're doing now and how you're living, that's going to be more powerful because likely you're just pushing it off to some other time that might never happen rather than just doing it now.
100%. Yeah, I really like Tim Ferriss's idea about that, where he says that a good life is measured in average Tuesdays.
Yes.
That like you can gauge how
Yes.
good your life is by how good your average Tuesday is. And
I love that.
he,
Mm.
yeah, it's really nice. And I really like his idea too of I read the 4 Hour Workweek when I was like early in college.
Yep.
And the idea of micro retirements really resonated with me
Mm.
because just like what you were saying about this Western idea of making all of your money, only taking 2 weeks of vacation a year until you're 65 and a half, and then you cash everything out, and now you've got 20 years to ride out in the sunset. His
Right.
idea is instead of going with that route, like take those 20 years and those sunset years at the very end, and
Mm.
instead like sprinkle those into the rest of the 30 years that you're going to be working.
Yeah.
And I really like that idea because to me, I'm like, I don't really see myself as somebody who's going to want to just not be doing anything at any point,
Mm.
right? Like
Right.
it might be some like advisory roles or some board stuff or some charity, like who knows what I'll get into down the line. But I would far rather take those 20 years and like have experiences when I still have the energy, when I still probably don't have the same financial resources that I'll have then, but like enough where I can just experience life as I'm living it instead of feeling
Yes.
like I'm working life in hopes that at some point I'll be able to cash in and like live it later.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. And I feel very similar too of like I think we plan for this big dream later, but the truth is some of us it's like, okay, well, how do we know if we're going to get there, you know? Or also how do we know if the systems will still be set up the same way? I think there's a lot of fear around like, okay, you're self-employed, so what about your 401k and your Roth IRA and all of these things? And I'm like, who knows if these are even going to actually be a thing for us later?
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know. I don't really live my life to cash those out later. Like I would rather be in
Hmm.
alignment now rather than just waiting to someday feel purpose. I think especially
I'm
if you're in your purpose, you don't want to we don't really I don't really wanna not work. It's just how do I work when I want to work? And that's how I'm living now of, like, time freedom. Like, I don't take calls on Mondays, I don't take calls on Fridays. Um, I spend a lot of time outside. I write all my LinkedIn posts outside in the grass. So I'm like, I feel that is success to me. But I feel there's a whole other piece to that, which is like unlearning because it's been really hard for me to actually like unlearn a 9 to 5, unlearn working to be productive. And like the guilt that comes up with like, should I be working or is it more productive to actually not be working today? You know? So I like the 4 hour work week too. But for me, I feel there's like something else that's like not just 4 hours, like even more work because I don't know, I feel that concept for me was like there's like I feel so much purpose with my work. I don't necessarily want to work as least amount as possible, but it's more of like the balance and like the freedom that I really liked about that concept, the 4 hour work week.
I
Yeah.
agree. And I really enjoyed the idea too of like, I think that his point was kind of what we were talking about earlier is you probably don't have to work as much as you are right now. You can probably
Yeah.
get done with most of the stuff that you're allowing to fill 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in a lot shorter time, which gives you the ability to find the thing that you find purpose in and then decide how much you want to do that. Because I
Yeah.
think if you're in that zone of feeling like you're giving to the world and feeling like you're fulfilled, it's up to you how much time you want to spend doing that. And I think that like the pull motivation of that inherently makes you want to like spend a lot of time doing it, which is a lot different than how can
Yes.
I get out of my 8 hour a day job and make it a 2 hour a day job.
Which goes back to what you said before, actually. I'm just thinking because sometimes when I first started my business, I still had the same mindset of like, oh, I don't want as many calls like when I was in my corporate job versus now. But actually, that shifts when you're in this giving mode because I actually get energy from helping people, from sharing, from presenting, from talking. Um, that actually sometimes, if you don't work at all, you might, and you're in your purpose, you will actually want to. Like, I took 2 weeks off um, for the first time a couple of months back when we were in South Korea. And it just didn't feel the same as when I took 2 weeks off when I was at a corporate job because I was like, yay, like I'm off. But this was like, oh, I wonder how she's doing. And I hope that
Yeah.
she's okay. And I like want to talk to her or share this idea. So I think it shifts when you're in deeper alignment and like rest is still really helpful. But I think maybe you crave it in different ways.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, usually I like to close out these podcasts talking about what success looks like for people. But I think that you've done a really good job of painting what that picture might look like for you. And so instead, I want to leave this episode with maybe some like tangible takeaways that somebody can walk away with to say like, okay, I want to feel the same sense of alignment. I want to explore my spirituality and my profession or my calling at the same time and feel this like sense of Zen ambition. What pieces of advice or what first steps or things that somebody might notice, what would kind of, what are some of the pieces of advice or some of like the first steps that people could take if they're hoping to go down that path?
Yes. I would say, not to push this on everyone, but it's changed my life. So it's my advice is start a daily meditation practice, like 3 minutes a day. When I started doing this, my whole world shifted. I came at it from a more regulated state. Also, I believe meditation connects you back to yourself. So it's just going to give you more clarity of what you actually want, and give you more clarity to see like, yeah, what the next steps are. So meditation, whether that's 2 minutes a day in the morning, followed by journal practice. So maybe the first prompt they can try is ask yourself, like, what lights me up? I think that's a question we don't ask ourselves enough. And when we do and allow ourselves space to reflect on it, sometimes, a lot of times, I've led journaling workshops in abroad countries versus in the US. And that question, oftentimes in places where people haven't really left their hometown or they feel like they haven't explored, it's like, wow, what lights me up is the opposite of what I'm doing. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
wow. So sometimes just asking ourselves a question. So journaling has changed my life too. Um, and then start being curious about your intuition. Like what way back in the beginning of the episode, we talked about like the little nudges, like try something new or try to tune in. Like in that meditation session for 3 minutes, ask yourself, like, what do I want to do today? And notice what comes up. Um, and then lastly, build a personal brand on some platform. The power of a personal brand is, I believe your personal brand is leverage and leverage is your freedom. So consider what creative medium works best for you. And yeah, I also recommend going all in on your personal brand in some way and form to have that leverage for yourself to create that freedom.
I
Yeah.
love it. Mic drop. Journal. Get on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Start meditating.
Yeah.
I love what Michael
Exactly.
Smoke says. He says it is simple, but it's not easy. Like, yeah, pretty much every
Yeah.
time.
And the consistency. I always say we get caught up in other like numbers, like, oh, how does this post go viral? It's consistency is your number one metric, I think. That will be more powerful than chasing anything else. Yeah.
100%. Well,
Yeah.
getting ready for this episode and consuming a lot of the things that you put out into the world. Number one, I'm just so impressed by the life and the business that you've been able to build. And it was also very motivating for me to get back on LinkedIn and start sharing a little bit more, both on there and on platforms that just like encourage things other than 14-second videos. So I'm really excited to kind of dive back in on some of that. So thank you for inspiring me and then also inspiring everybody else who you touch.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope that I come across your videos. There's a video tab. So maybe you can post your clips on there. And I'll keep an eye out for
Beautiful.
them. Give them a
Okay,
repost.
perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this was super fun. I support the heck out of what you're doing. So if there's ever anything that you need from me, then that's great. And hopefully if I'm out on the East Coast, we can do one in person and catch up. It'd be a lot of fun.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you for having me. And same to you, your mission and your work and taking the leap and also just highlighting everyone else's stories. Like I said, I've listened to a lot of your episodes of people that I resonated with. So feels really aligned. And thanks for having me on to share my story to your audience.
Absolutely. All righty, everybody. Well, we will put where to find Paige in the description for all of the LinkedIn help and being able to be inspired by all of her stuff. So thank you guys for tuning in and be where your feet are. We love you.